Gears Tactics is a turn-based tactics spin-off of the Gears of War franchise. Developed by Splash Damage in conjunction with the Coalition, it was released last year in 2020, and despite positive reviews, I don't remember hearing a lot about it. One could say it didn't make much of a splash. Damage. I believe it's the third time we've seen a strategy spin-off developed for one of Microsoft's flagship franchises after Halo Wars 1 and 2. Recently, I've been getting a hankering to play through XCOM 2 again, but I thought, hang on, why not channel that energy and try this new other tactics game out? So that's what we're going to do. Here we go. I'll just briefly mention that I had some issues with textures taking a while to pop in. This occasionally happened during gameplay, but most of the time it was in the cutscenes, and when I tried messing around with the settings in an attempt to fix it, it seemed to get worse to the extent that sometimes the textures just weren't popping in at all, so not really sure what was going on there. Furthermore, in a few of my cutscenes the audio desynced.
And then your man tried to escape with him.
Because of this, I may need to borrow some cutscene footage from someone else when I'm editing this, but I'll make sure to give credit where it's due because I am a good boy. Style-wise, it's very true to the Gears franchise, with lots of bulky armor and guns with chainsaws and such. The environments do get a bit samey. You're usually fighting in the burning rubble of a city, or you're in some kind of sandy outback. Sometimes it's night, usually it's daytime. Visual aids are clear and make it very easy to assess your situation and plan your next moves, with these white lines representing line of sight, an easy to digest analysis of chance to hit and damage above each enemy's head when you take aim at them. Switch your TACCOM on and it will give you a list of the active status effects on whoever you're hovering over. It's essential stuff for a tactics game and it's communicated well. I liked the sound design. It's got that Gears-style heft behind it, the revving of chainsaws, the thud of sliding into cover, there's a weight to the explosions, it's all good stuff. The music is professionally done with an orchestral soundtrack that oscillates between intense action and dark foreboding. I have to admit that while playing I didn't notice it much, but after listening to the soundtrack and reviewing the clips, it's pretty good, if perhaps a little generic. Before I get into gameplay, I just want to specify that I played the jacked version of the campaign, which came out after the classic version and added new weapon mods, new variants of enemies called Deviants, and most noticeably, a little flying robot called Jack. I'll go into more detail later. Like some other tactics games, Gears has turn-based missions in between which you return to a hub. I'll talk about the missions first. Coming from XCOM 2, the mechanics that immediately stick out to me were those that differ. For instance, there's no dash. Each soldier has a number of action points, usually 3 at the start of their turn. Both actions and movement use these action points, so you can decide to run really far and not take an action, or you can choose not to move at all and fire 3 times, or some other combination. Some equipment gives soldiers a chance to gain more AP after firing, but better than that, if you down an enemy, you can rush on over and execute them before they die, which will give every soldier but the one performing the execution another action point. In some cases, you can pull off chain executions with one soldier and double the AP of the others. There's a number of ways the devs have made an effort to keep Tactics' gameplay consistent with the original games, the downed and execution mechanics being just 2, and I love the fact that they've done this. You still always feel like you're playing a Gears game. Continuing with what differs, you can't make comparisons to XCOM without mentioning Overwatch. I've seen a fair bit of praise for Tactics' Overwatch mechanic, and deservedly so. Rather than having a soldier on standby to shoot the first thing that moves, you have to designate a cone-like area of the map for the soldier to cover. Any enemy unit that moves, or even fires in that cone, will get a reaction shot. You determine not just the angle, but the range as well. This is key because if you predict that, for example, multiple enemies are going to move closer to your position, you don't want all of your soldiers using up their overwatches on the first guy that comes into range. By being clever about it and stacking overwatches with variable ranges, it can be devastating, though be careful not to catch your own guys in the area because friendly fire is on. Now when I say use up their overwatches, I should clarify. It's not just a one and done deal. Overwatchers use AP. A soldier will keep firing until they either run out of AP or they run out of ammo. So equipping an extended mag combined with bonus action points can have a soldier holding a choke point all by themselves. It's definitely more engaging than XCOM's Overwatch, but I did feel that it was maybe too powerful. When you combine this kind of Overwatch with equipment that gives Disrupt, which interrupts enemy actions when they're hit, which in turn can stop them getting any closer and leave them exposed, it sometimes feels like there's no point actually trying for a shot. Even when a soldier is himself caught in an enemy's Overwatch, it will only trigger if he actually moves. So while standing up to take aim is a no-go, depending on the angle, the soldier may just be able to Overwatch right back, and in these situations will almost always win. Let's move away from the XCOM comparisons and talk about the classes. You get a maximum of 4 soldiers in a squad, with Jack taking up the 5th special slot. Each soldier is one of 5 classes and uses a specific gun that Gears fans will recognise. Support with the Lancer, a rifle, Vanguard the Retro Lancer, a higher damage rifle, Sniper with the Longshot Sniper, Scout with the Nasher shotgun, or Heavy with the Mulcher machine gun. What each class specialises in is what you would expect, and you can take any combination you want on missions. None of them felt redundant, but if I had to pick my least favourite, it would probably be the Scout, as the short range of its shotgun meant that it had to get into danger more often, and this didn't seem to pay off any more than the other soldiers who could shoot from further away. The best class has to be a support spec'd into healing. One of these essentially assures the safety of your team. A well-equipped sniper also can do huge damage and is particularly useful for the boss fights. Jack, while unable to attack, provides utility through whichever skills you decide to spec him into, such as taking control of an enemy for 2 turns, putting down a smoke to break an enemy's line of sight, or simply buffing your soldiers' accuracy and damage. He's a good addition to the game, and I can't see why someone would bother to play Classic instead. It is possible that he makes the game easier, considering he tags along on every mission and provides support where there wasn't before. I assume the dev's intention was to balance this out with deviant enemies, powered up versions of the standard enemies, but I have to say that they made so little impact on me that I barely remember what they do. The game is split into 3 acts. The first has 6 chapters, the second and third have 8. Each chapter has a main mission, with some also having side missions, and at the end of each act you face a boss. Aside from the bosses, there are 5 types of missions, although really there are 4 because 2 are essentially the same. Sabotage/incursion has you kill all enemies in an area so you can steal or destroy the objective. Rescue involves rescuing 2 prisoners in 15 turns, then fleeing to an evac zone. Control has you holding 2 supply zones, each giving you 1 supply per turn provided you control it free of enemies until you reach 10 supplies. And Scavenger has you fleeing nemesis or airstrikes while collecting crates and then fleeing to an evac zone. Each mission type has its own focus, and you will have to adapt how you play to achieve victory in each one. The side missions, although labelled as such, are still mandatory missions, just with no plot relevance. However, modifiers such as no Overwatch or enemies get 50% bonus movement range help to change things up enough that these side missions can be some of the most entertaining in the game. Unfortunately, despite this, 4 mission types is really not enough for a 30-hour game, and it becomes impossible not to notice the feeling of having just played this level a couple of missions ago, especially as the layouts are often so similar. They might have got away with this lack of variety had they not overdone it with the side missions. The side missions are attached to the chapters in such a way that in Acts 1 and 2 combined, there are 3 instances of having to complete 2 of 3 missions. This wasn't so bad. But in Act 3, there are 4 instances of having to complete 3 out of 4 missions. You end up with 12 extra side missions in addition to the 8 main missions, 19 of which are a variation on the same 4 mission types as all but 2 of every mission you've done so far. And it's just such obvious padding. It's frustrating how developers continue to shoot themselves in the foot attempting to pump a few more hours out of their game. By doing so, they draw more attention to the poor mission variety, while also making the game feel more of a chore to play. The bosses at least do mix things up. They aren't complicated or difficult, but each has its own attack pattern and behaviour, so they stand out as easily the most memorable missions in the entire game for their individuality. The bosses aren't hard because, in general, the game isn't hard. Now to be fair, Tactics isn't like XCOM where you lead soldiers that are entirely expendable. You have characters that have to survive any mission they are taken on. It's not your story, it's theirs. Thus, I don't think Tactics is aiming to brutally beat you back in that manner because you generally need to win to progress the story. Now, you can change the difficulty at any time, so don't worry too much about it, but my recommendation if you have even the least bit of experience with tactics games, and to be honest, maybe even if you don't, would be experienced. Intermediate is far too easy. The gap between the two is not large, and as far as I can tell, the intelligence of the AI remains the same. But it does make changes to health and damage, and this seems to be enough to force you to make greater use of your soldiers' skills to win. Sure, the enemies are still going to quite happily trigger your overwatches over and over again, but you're going to find yourself in more tight situations. Situations that call for drastic plans. You'll find yourself at least being threatened with the possibility of death and failure, unless you can work your way out of it far more than you ever will on Intermediate. That being said, even on Experienced, there are times when the game is so easy to cheese. I've mentioned Overwatch already, but to illustrate my point, there was one mission where I was limited to only 2 soldiers and decided to plonk them down in full cover and have them overwatch every turn. Now, I knew this was never going to actually work because the enemy would never be so stupid as to "and they're all dead."
Well, apart from these sniper bastards who were too selfish to walk into my overwatches and are ruining the punchline, but you get the point.
There are also revives. Every time a soldier loses all their health, they go into a down state. Either another soldier needs to revive them, in which case the down soldier will come back with max AP, or they can, once per mission, revive themselves, though with only 1 AP left to make a move with. The amount of times a soldier can be down before they die is decided by difficulty, but they will always come back with reduced max health. It's quite a forgiving mechanic, and though I will reiterate that it's to the game's credit not to be too brutal with the difficulty, it did mean that sometimes what looked to be a hairy situation on the surface was not, because no one was that close to actually dying. Frag grenades are perhaps too powerful as well.
Outgoing frag!
All soldiers can equip either a frag or a stim grenade, which heals. I swapped out all my stims for frags because stims suck and heal a negligible amount, and frags are amazing.
Frag out!
Each soldier has infinite of them. They're on a relatively short cooldown, which through other skills and equipment add-ons can be made shorter.
Throwing frag!
They are used to close E-holes, holes from which enemies can reinforce until they are closed.
Throwing frag!
Though these all but disappear about 2/3 into the game for some reason, and the enemy just seem to positively enjoy lining themselves up to be exploded into small chunks. You'll be using them a lot, as well as spending minutes of your time attempting to find that one tiny sweet spot that allows you to maximize their effect. Between missions, you return to the Convoy, the hub from where you can launch missions, as well as recruit, spec, equip, and customize your soldiers. There are nearly always new soldiers to recruit, alongside any that you bring back alive from rescue missions, and they all come at a level corresponding to how far you are into the game, so no having to start over with a fresh level 1 recruit. Throughout the game, the roster size is expanded bit by bit so you can add new soldiers in to fill in any new spaces, as well as on the rare occasion of losing a soldier. Something I didn't mention earlier on is that during the points where you have to complete side missions, you can only take each soldier once. This was necessary, otherwise you would never take anyone other than the main characters because, despite the fact that they are not expendable and therefore you are upping the risk of failure by choosing them, they are also bound to be your most leveled soldiers as well as having your best equipment. However, especially early on, side missions are not so prevalent, thus you don't use your other soldiers as much, thus they become underleveled in comparison to possible new recruits, thus you end up simply replacing them with others of the same class. This is one reason why you don't get attached to your soldiers in Tactics the same way you do in XCOM. Another would be customization. I think we can all agree that what makes customization in these games so cool is the ability to modify soldiers' likenesses in the image of our friends, so we can cry over their lifeless corpses when the sands of time run out for them. Gears Tactics has a decent amount of options, including for weaponry, with more unlocking as you progress. However, it only allows you to modify a pre-generated character, not change them. Skin tone and sex are locked in, so meticulously melding them into your friends is not an option much of the time. Because of this, you're probably not going to remember their names, nor are you going to shed a tear when the time comes to unceremoniously dismiss them from your roster. But hang on, what about their skill trees? This is the best reason for keeping an underleveled soldier around, if you've very carefully chosen their skills and the higher leveled replacement has a completely different set. I had 2 soldiers for which this was true and kept them with me until the end. That being said, due to the special attention I paid them, their level stayed nearly equal with the main characters, so there was rarely any reason to consider dismissing them. What's more, you earn reset tokens throughout the game which allow you to respec your soldiers. What's more, replacing soldiers with different skills is the best way to see how they play anyway. You're going to come away with your own favourites, but all the skills are viable, so why not try out some different styles? Though support is probably always better speccing into healing, unless you want to have to rely on stim grenades. You have so many soldiers by the end anyway that you kind of stop caring too much about their specific skills, which, again, doesn't really endear them towards you. So what does that leave? Oh yes, equipment. You get a lot of equipment in this game. You are rewarded with it upon completion of a main objective, upon completion of optional objectives, as well as from any crates that you picked up during the mission. Usually it comes in the form of weapon mods, though you get plenty of armor as well. All equipment gives a boost to a stat, such as health and / or a passive skill not available in the skill tree. These effects scale with the quality of the item, from white to blue, purple, gold, and then red, though you don't get red until the post-game. Again, like the skills, I was careful to select the best stuff for the main characters and the couple of other soldiers I regularly used, but by the end you have so much equipment and so many soldiers that you don't really care that much about the specifics of what most of them have equipped. To be clear, I like the equipment and skills in this game. I like how what you pick changes how you play. To refer back to the example I gave when I was talking about the Overwatch mechanic, the heavy with an extended mag and disrupt holding off the enemy single-handedly, it's satisfying when that happens because it's a reward for the effort you put into the preparation. There's just little motivation to do the same thing for everyone else because they get so little use anyway. And the answer to this is not to increase the amount of side missions. I think maybe it would have been better if there was a focus on a larger cast of main characters instead of all these expendable extras, and that might not just have benefited the gameplay. Before I talk about the plot, I just want to say that aside from playing through Gears of War 3 a decade ago apparently, I know nothing of the Gears lore other than hazy recollections and some tidbits I found out while researching this video. So there may be some bits I'm not picking up on, but this is apparently chronologically the first game, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem. I'll start us off and give a spoiler warning when we get a little further in. This is Sergeant Gabe Diaz. He serves in the armed forces of the COG, or the Coalition of Ordered Governments, who are fighting against the Locust, an alien-like race who have emerged from underneath the surface. He and his soldiers in the motor pool are listening with disgust to a televised broadcast of their leader, Chairman Prescott, announcing that he is about to decimate the planet with hammer strikes. Major Sid Redburn, otherwise known endearingly as
Mustache Man,
arrives. Moments afterwards, Gabe receives orders to go with him to retrieve a classified document. Though he protests that he doesn't do that anymore, he has his orders. The two battle through Locust and find the file just before they have to take cover from impending hammer strikes. They survive and battle their way back to the motor pool where everyone has been killed. The file turns out to be on a Locust geneticist called Ukon, who is creating monsters, such as the Brumac and the Corpser, bosses in this game and creatures familiar to Gears fans. Prescott stresses that it is imperative Ukon is stopped and orders Gabe to eliminate him. This is the opening to the game and I already have some issues, primarily that I am not convinced of the priority of this mission. Firstly, Gabe and Sid were sent out to retrieve the file amid hammer strikes which could very easily have, and very nearly did, killed them, in which case not only would Prescott lose the file, but also the soldiers he intended to send after Ukon. Furthermore, when Gabe receives his orders to hunt Ukon down, he quite reasonably asks for manpower and equipment, and Prescott essentially says, what do I look like, a charity? Find some people off the street to help you. Gabe proceeds to do exactly this for most of Act 1, rescuing and recruiting COG and civvies, including Michaela, our third main character. Alright, this is your spoiler break. If you feel the need to experience it firsthand, this is where to get off, by which I mean skip to the conclusion. I will say that I wouldn't worry too much about it, but hey, the choice is up to you. Okay. After recruiting some people, the team track Ukon down and Michaela jumps the gun by shooting him through the mouth. For a moment, she makes everyone else look a bit of a knob for trying to stop her until Ukon gets back up and summons his pet Brumac, which they then have to defeat. Afterwards, Gabe berates Prescott for not revealing that Ukon is seemingly invincible. Judging from Sid's reaction after Ukon goes down, as well as some later story details, one can assume that Sid knew as well. Prescott's response is,
"And some secrets also keep people alive. Now do your job."
What are you talking about? What possible benefit could there have been to not inform the assassination squad that their target cannot be killed? I mean, granted, it wouldn't do wonders for their confidence, but by not telling them, you ensure that their first attempt is going to fail, as well as any other consequences that may come about as a result. It makes no sense. In the wake of this, Gabe has the convoy retreat, where they will train and come up with a new plan. During Act 2, some in the convoy desert and get captured by the Locust. I'd have left the fuckers, but because Gabe has a heart of gold, they are rescued. Next to the last prisoner are some canisters which catch his eye. Upon inspection, Michaela discovers they are immune system boosters, which work only against rust lung, a fatal condition caused by exposure to emulsion fumes. Emulsion, for those who aren't aware, is a parasitic fungal goo that's used primarily as a fuel source, and ultimately becomes a pretty big problem in the main games, but I'm not going to go into that. It's surmised that Ukon has rust lung and needs these canisters. They decide to set up a trap, pretending to radio command that they're dumping a bunch of said canisters, hoping that Ukon will pick up on this. Ukon, that is the Ukon with an army at his disposal, decides to personally collect the canisters, taking with him a bodyguard of 2. He opens up the van and is immediately impaled in a snare. However, Ukon then recognises Sid, and Gabe barely has a moment to process this before he gets a rifle butt to the face. Ow! Michaela is understandably alarmed by this sudden turn of events, but Sid calmly and persuasively gives his reasons.
Wait, you're what?
I'm getting in this truck and driving away.
Oh, no, you're not. Stop! Stop!
I'm taking care of this my way.
And what way is that? The backstabbing lunatic way?
You want to be stupid? Go ahead, shoot.
Yeah, that was a joke, by the way. I genuinely thought this might be some kind of suicide by cop attempt. He just whacks Gabe in the face, says, "I'm taking Ukon," and then gives her no reason not to shoot him. Sid doesn't even have time to get in the van and/or get shot before Ukon, with 2 hooks embedded in his chest, just walks out of the snare and summons a corpser. Thankfully, Sid didn't hit Gabe too hard, and so they're able to work together to defeat the beast before Michaela knocks Sid out with a shovel. Gabe reports back to Prescott what happened, and Prescott orders him to execute Sid for committing treason. Gabe doesn't, and Sid explains that he was stationed at a lab where scientists were supposed to be researching a cure for rust lung, but ultimately ended up doing experiments which led to the creation of the Locust, most of whom were feral, but one, Ukon, was not. He then goes on to say,
I wanted to parade Ukon through the capital as proof that we need real military leadership to win this war, not manicured politicians. But for now, anyone who knows the truth is at risk, including you two.
Anyone who knows the truth of the Locust's origin is in danger, so this is why he didn't reveal his plan, which I can kind of buy, though the execution was obviously atrocious. Michaela and Gabe follow Sid's directions and find proof that he is telling the truth. Gabe, without revealing how much he knows, prods Prescott over what they've discovered. Prescott feigns ignorance, then claims that as Gabe has failed to execute Sid as ordered, he will be sending a team out to their position to arrest him. Gabe gives him the coordinates of a nearby mountain, which is promptly destroyed by a hammer strike. Despite the fact that Prescott now believes them dead, they decide to push on with their mission to kill Ukon. Sid regains Michaela and Gabe's trust by revealing that the scientists at the facility he was at used cytostatic gas to stop the healing process. A lot of sibilants in that sentence. Sid knows how to make it, so they gather the ingredients and Michaela crafts a grenade for it. Gabe works out where Ukon is hiding by examining a map and finding the one location in the vicinity that hasn't been attacked. When scouting out Ukon's location, they rescue another prisoner, and this is probably the most baffling plot decision in the game. This is Reyna. She is the 4th and final main character being introduced to us in Chapter 5 of Act 3. There are 6 missions left in the campaign at this point, and she can't even go on all of them. She adds essentially nothing to the story. She is just an angry young woman who wants to kill Ukon because Ukon killed her dad. She actually says in the game that she doesn't know why she wasn't killed, and if you check the plot on the game's Wikipedia page, it says, "For reasons unknown, he killed her father and everyone else in the lab, sparing her life." So we've got a real well-developed character here. It really does seem like she's only in the game because A, she knows where Ukon is, and B, she gives you more reason to kill Ukon, I guess? Maybe the prior motivation is no longer considered enough? Now, as I said at the beginning of this section, I have done some minimal research on Gears lore, and so those who have played the more recent games will know that Gabe and Reyna will go on to have a daughter, Kate, who is one of the main characters of the new generation of Gears. And Reyna herself plays a significant part in her daughter's story. So another reason for her inclusion, then, is obviously to set her and Gabe up. But then that really begs the question, why wait so late? Surely it would have made more sense to introduce her early and have her grow close with Gabe over the course of the game. As it is, we barely get to see them interact at all. Anyway, they assault Ukon's compound, hit him with the cytostatic gas, deal with his final beastie, the Hydra, and then Reyna shoots him in the face. This time he doesn't get back up. The group walk off into the sunset, making plans to destroy any other of Ukon's creations still around. At the beginning of this video, I said I played Gears Tactics because I wanted something to scratch that XCOM 2 itch I was getting. In that, it was successful. Tactics is not as good as XCOM, but it is a good game. I had quibbles with just about every area, but it didn't ever take away the fact that I was having fun. I didn't want it to go on any longer, and I certainly wasn't playing so I could find out what happened next in the story, but that is at least a testament to its gameplay. I might well replay Gears Tactics when the memories of it become fuzzy enough that the missions feel fresh again. It apparently took 4.5 years to develop, so I don't know if we'll see a Tactics 2. If we do, I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it. I'd love to see some new ideas and a better story, but if we don't, then I at least hope that some future Tactics game will take some inspiration from it. It has some great ideas worth stealing. Maybe even XCOM 3 could learn something.